Hello, sisters. So this week we are going to talk about discipline, which is a really hard one. And it may be the number one reason that you haven't truly reached health and wellness because of lack of discipline. And, the Bible talks a lot about discipline. It is something that is important. It's important when it comes to our children, disciplining them. The Bible talks about that. God disciplines us, He corrects us, reroutes us. And it also talks about discipline when it comes to our bodies. And discipline is so important. Okay, so the memory verse this week that I want you to write everywhere you can see, put it as your screensaver, do whatever you need to do to memorize it, is Hebrews 12:11. And it says, "No discipline is pleasant at the time, but in fact painful. But later it will yield the peaceful fruit of righteousness for those who have been trained by it." Okay, so I want to encourage you that if you can commit to discipline, especially when it comes to your health journey, it's going to produce fruit. Discipline produces fruit. The Bible talks about it over and over and over again. When we do the things that are hard in life, when we stay focused and do it, we are going to have that result. So often, though, we get focused on the things that we have to give up to reach that. So in your health, it may be giving up the cookies every single night or giving up the time to exercise instead of focusing on the reward, the fruit, the thing that comes from it. So my challenge to you this week is to look at what you're going to gain from discipline. Okay, look at the reward that you're going to get versus the sacrifice it's going to take to get there. Okay, because if we can keep our eyes on the reward, it is going to help us get there. All right, so I want you to memorize that this week. I want you to memorize that verse. You see, discipline is never easy in the moment. It's never easy when we decide to have the water over the soda. It's never easy when we decide to go exercise instead of scroll on Facebook. It's never easy in the moment. And the Bible warns us of that in Hebrews. But if you will do the hard thing, you're going to have great fruit. Okay, so if you haven't printed out your worksheet for this week, go ahead and do that. It's right here in this lesson. Print it out and work through it. Okay, we're going to work through it together this week. All right, so your first little box, the question is, in what ways can you challenge yourself to a life of discipline in each of our topics? All right, so let's just kind of walk through these for a minute. So first of all, in your faith life, how can you challenge yourself this week to be disciplined in your faith? That may mean a daily quiet time. That may mean buying a little devotional that you can read within a couple of minutes and committing to doing it. It may mean focusing on prayer, being more intentional about prayer. For me, my faith this week, the way that I can really be disciplined in it is having positive talk and positive thoughts. Okay, oftentimes our negativity can get in the way and we can focus on the bad things instead of the promises of God and the goodness of God. So my challenge to produce discipline in my faith life is anytime a negative thought comes about this week is to replace it with a positive thought. Replace it with God's truth. Look to His word for the truth that combats that negativity. Okay, so that's not always easy. It requires discipline. It requires capturing every thought. All right, and if it's a negative thought, crushing it right away. So let's talk about fitness a little bit. How can you discipline yourself this week when it comes to fitness? For some of you, it means just simply starting. Maybe you've been in this program for a while and have yet to even turn on the exercise videos. That's the hardest part, is starting. So commit to 3 days this week. For some of you, maybe you've been hit or miss getting 3 days in a week or so. Go ahead and commit to more. Commit to 6 days a week, 5 days a week, prioritizing, putting it into your schedule. You have to discipline yourself when it comes to fitness. So how can you put some discipline in practice? For me, it is simply writing it into my week, writing it into my planner as a very important appointment with a very important person, that is myself, and just doing it, just simply committing to doing it. So what about food? How can you discipline yourself this week? Now, it should be a challenge. Discipline isn't easy. Remember, the Bible warns it's not easy. So when it comes to food, what is that struggle of yours? What is that thing that you are struggling with? And how can you discipline yourself this week? Is it sweets? Is it sugar? Is it eating on the go? Is it eating out too much? I'm going to focus on water only this week. I used to be really good at this, and I'm not horrible, but lately I've been allowing these little coffee drinks here or wine glass there or soda here in too frequently instead of just fueling my body with water. So my challenge, what I'm going to discipline myself for this week, is to have only water, not milk, not anything else, just water when it comes to liquid calories, because we really don't need all of that extra stuff. So how are you going to discipline yourself when it comes to food this week? And in your worksheet, you got these little places down here to write what your challenge is for the week, how you're going to discipline yourself in that topic. So let's talk about our families for a minute. You may have a spouse, maybe you have a boyfriend, maybe you have your parents, the relationship isn't good, or your grandparents or your children. What do you need to do to discipline yourself when it comes to your family, just to show love, okay? Just to show Christ to your family. For me, it is removing any negative talk, not even allowing one word of negative to go towards my husband this week. Because oftentimes the person we love the most, so your children, your husband, whatever it may be, are the ones that get the worst of us, right? Because we're tired when we come home. We have nothing left to give them. And we sometimes can just shoot out the negative because we know they're going to love us anyway. And it's easy to let our guard down and say things that we wouldn't say to other people. So I challenge you guys, and my challenge, the way I discipline myself when it comes to my family this week, is to not be negative, to not say anything negative towards my husband, and to not raise my voice to my 2-year-old who is trying to test my patience over and over and over again. You see, it's easy if you've been taught in a home of negativity, or if you were raised with a family that yelled a lot, for that to be your natural instinct. And for me, I have to be mindful against it, because my natural instinct, if Saber does something, is to maybe raise my voice at him. But that's not how God wants us to discipline. So my discipline this week is to watch how I speak to my family. And let's talk about fun. It seems silly, right, that you have to discipline yourself to have fun. But the reality is, for most of us, we're so busy with the stresses of life, just trying to get through the day, trying to do our work, trying to get healthy, trying to take care of our family, that we forget to have fun. And we have to discipline ourselves to go out and do that. So the way I will do that is to carve out playtime daily. So oftentimes, if Saber is in his room playing, I am doing something, multitasking while playing, maybe responding to clients, or maybe doing the laundry, or whatever else, cooking dinner. So a very hard thing for me that I would have to discipline myself to do is to just play for 30 minutes with him uninterrupted, having fun, because you know what? It's actually fun to play, but we just don't do it. So maybe you need to discipline yourself to write in your schedule a day of fun with your girlfriends this week. I don't know what it is, but having a fun life takes discipline, because as silly as it sounds, we don't carve out time for it. And then the last topic of ours is finances. So how can you discipline yourself when it comes to your finances this week? And maybe you need to say no to that one thing so that you can reach that savings of $1,000 and move on to the next step of paying off your debt. Or maybe you need to give 10% to God. Maybe you've been kind of stingy with this money that he's given you, and you feel like there's not enough to give 10%. Maybe you need to discipline and challenge yourself to go ahead and give it anyway and see how he blesses you. I know for me right now, we're in a season of change, so neither of our incomes are set and certain. So sometimes the easy thing would be to not tithe, to say, oh, there's just not enough this week. Don't fall into that habit. Discipline yourself to go ahead and give anyway. Discipline yourself to go ahead and pay off that debt that you have the money in the account for, but you just are saving that money. Pay it off. Okay, so how can you discipline yourself? Because the Bible says discipline is hard when you're doing it. It's not easy. But if you do it, you're going to have a reward. You're going to have a reward so great. Playing with your child for 30 minutes, it's going to pay off in dividends. Paying off that debt is going to save you so much interest. Having a positive mindset is going to pay off for everyone who's in your realm of influence. Okay, so how can you discipline yourself this week? And it's going to be hard. What can you do to challenge yourself? Because see, the Bible also says in Hebrews 12, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. I want to stop right there, because we have a great cloud of witnesses ourselves, which is our soul sisters. You are in a community of women who want to do better, who are striving to achieve wellness and greatness. This is your community, okay? So if you haven't attached yourself to an accountability team yet, you need to do it. You need to attach yourself to a team right here in this portal. You can just go to Teams and just join one and hold each other accountable. Be each other's witnesses, okay? hold each other accountable in these areas of life. And the Bible continues to say, let us lay aside every single weight and sin which clings so closely. So we're going to stop there. What is that weight? What is that thing that is hindering you? What is that sin that is keeping you from living that abundant life? Write down those things that are hindering you right now in that bottom box. For me, a lack of time management and planning. If I don't get into my calendar and plan out every single workout, plan out when I'm going to prepare my meals for the week, plan out when I'm going to go to the grocery, it forces me into impulse decisions that aren't healthy. Okay, so maybe your current hindrance is just a lack of planning and a lack of time management. Maybe you feel like you don't have enough time, and that's because you have said yes to too many things. And if that's the case, don't say no to your health. Don't say no to this program because your health is worth it. But what are other things that you're saying yes to? Maybe it's the scrolling on social media. Maybe it is just being involved in too many different things that doesn't allow you enough time to take care of your own health. Because if you can say no to this program, you can say no to getting healthy, but eventually it's going to come back up to haunt you because you're not going to be well enough to do all the other things you're saying yes to. So what do you need to say no to so that you can have enough time to focus on your own health, to make it a priority? Maybe your hindrance is your mindset, squashing those negative thoughts, just not being disciplined, excuses. And a lot of times our hindrance is we are looking to please ourselves instead of God. So we say yes to that thing that maybe we shouldn't, such as the binge eating, because it's gratification in that moment. We are looking to please ourselves and we're not thinking about how can I honor God in this situation. Okay, so what is hindering you? What is hindering you? The Bible goes on to say, lay off every weight, every sin that hinders us so that we can run the race with endurance that is set before us. You have a race that has been set before you. You are in a race right now, a race to wellness, a race to a stronger life of faith, a race to getting healthy when it comes to fitness, food, a race to financial freedom, a race to a healthy, fun family. You are in a race right now, and there are hindrances holding you back, and you got to let go of them so that you can run that race with endurance. Now, here's the key point. It goes on to say, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. We have to look to him because in our own will and our own strength, we're going to fail every time. We're going to let ourselves down. We're going to let our family down. We have to look to God to give us that strength to keep moving forward. And it goes on to say, look into Jesus, who for the joy that was set before him. You see, he knew there was a reward coming after that discipline. He endured the cross, despising the shame, and now he is seated at the right hand of God. So he had to go through the horrible pain. He had to discipline himself to walk through the pain of dying on the cross for us. But he knew that once he did that, the reward would be wonderful. We would be saved. He would be at the throne of God. Because of that, we have freedom. All right. That we have freedom because of that. And what discipline that took Christ to walk forward in that. But he had his eye on the reward, not the challenge. So our little measly discipline of exercise that seems so hard is nothing compared to what Jesus did for us. We have to keep our eye on the reward of getting healthy and feeling good. And that measly little thing of just making the right food choices that seem so hard in the moment and really are hard is nothing compared to what Christ did for us. So if we can keep our eyes fixed on him, asking for strength to walk forward, he's going to give us that, okay? We just have to fix our eyes on him and commit to being disciplined. So there's another verse that I want to break down with you guys for this week's training, which is Proverbs 25:28. And it says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. So I want to imagine your house for a moment. If it didn't have walls, if I didn't have this wall to the outside right here, it would allow the rain to pour in on me. It would allow the summer heat to just blare through. It would allow the winter snow to freeze my family. It would allow moths and snakes and mice and everything else to break through. It would allow robbers to come in and steal my things. Walls are so important in protecting a home, right? The Bible says a man without self-control, a woman without self-control is like a house with no walls. So I want you to think for a minute. So do you have self-control in your life? For most of us, we don't always. We don't have self-control when it comes to our tongue. We just say things we shouldn't. Or we don't have self-control when it comes to the food we're putting in our mouth. We just eat things without slowing down. Or we don't have self-control when it comes to spending our money on things that we should. We just buy what we want in the moment and then pay for it later. You see, the Bible says a man without self-control has no walls. So when walls are missing in our lives, we leave our life open to the attacks of the enemy, to the attacks of Satan. Now, here's the good news. God has filled us with his spirit, and his spirit is a spirit of self-control. So if we can lean on his spirit, we can tap into that self-control. If we can ask him for that strength, but we have to remember to do it. Okay? Now, I want you to think about our topics here and think about when you don't have self-control in those areas, how does it open up your life to the attacks of the enemy? When those walls are broken down, how does it open up your life to the attacks of the enemy, of Satan? Okay, so in our faith, when we don't have self-control in our faith, when we don't have self-control and force ourselves to spend our quiet time, spend our prayer time, have our meditation, even when we don't want to, it can open up our home to a negative mindset. Can open up our mind to fixed on things of the world instead of things of Christ. Okay, so that wall of positivity is broken down if we don't have self-control when it comes to our spiritual disciplines. So what about fitness? If we don't have self-control and force ourselves to do that exercise that's so important for our bodies, that wall of physical health is going to be broken down. And we're not going to be able to keep up with life. Achy, pain, soreness, tiredness, fatigue. It will only continue to get worse, my friend, if you don't commit to the self-control, the self-discipline of exercise. We have to do it. So what about food? What lies can Satan pour on you when you don't have self-control when it comes to food? So I know for me, anytime I fall into a pattern of lack of self-control, whether it be binge eating or emotional eating or just not doing the right things when it comes to nutrition, Satan starts to pour this little lie into my mind that that's just who I am, that I will never have control over this thing. And I know many of you have maybe believed that lie before. You've tried every plan out there, right? And you're like, I'm just never going to get control of this nutrition. That is a lie of the enemy. And because of our lack of self-control, because of our lack of looking to God and asking for his spirit of self-control to pour over us, Satan is getting into our mind and telling us that we will never conquer this thing. And that's a lie that you have to squash, because you have freedom through Christ, and he is going to help you overcome this thing, okay? So what about when it comes to your family? When you don't have self-control in your family life, when you maybe give a little bit too much flirtation to that person at work or at the restaurant or wherever you go that's giving you an attention. When you maybe just buy into it a little bit too much and you don't have self-control, what's that going to do to your marriage? When you don't have self-control of your tongue and you're constantly shooting your husband down, how is Satan going to come in and attack your marriage? It's simple. He's going to make it crumble. He's going to make it crumble. When my husband and I don't respect and love each other and guard our mouths, it is a life of chaos. And God never intended that for our homes. He wants a life of peace. So if you don't have self-control when it comes to your family, putting discipline in place for your children, even though it's hard, they're going to walk all over you, right? We have to discipline our children even when it's hard. Sometimes we have to show that tough love, or they're going to walk all over us. And that is how Satan just kind of gets into our families and breaks them apart. God designed us to have strong families, and we have to do that by having a life of self-control, or that wall of a strong family is going to crumble. Self-control, self-discipline to have a date night. Oh, we don't carve it out near enough, but making that priority of that time for your family. Okay, now what about when you don't have self-control when it comes to finances? When you aren't giving to the Lord, when you aren't saving, when you aren't being a good steward of what he's given you, Satan's going to come in and wreak havoc, and you're not going to be under the blessings of God. He wants to bless your life. But when we don't have self-control when it comes to these things, Satan is just going to wreak havoc. He's going to tear down every wall of our house, and he is going to send his robbers in, the snakes in, the rain in, the snow in, and it's going to crumble. We have to build a life on self-control and self-discipline. It is not easy, but when you choose to do it, you are going to have great reward, and the results are going to be so much better than you could ever imagine. Okay, my friend? So I challenge you, sister. I challenge you this week to write down those things that are hindering you, to join an accountability team, to commit to the challenges of discipline this week. No matter how hard it is, just commit to it. Commit to discipline and see what God will do in and through these areas of your life. See how He will show up and change your marriage. See how He will show up and change your relationship with your child. See how your finances will start to be looking ahead for once. See how you will start to feel good again in your body when you can move and just see how your faith starts to change. Okay, discipline yourself, have control, and watch the fruit that will be produced in your life. I am so excited to see how God moves, and I look forward to coming back next week just to see what these little areas of discipline have did for you in 1 week's time. All right, so will you commit this week? Will you commit to putting off any hindrance and run that race God has set before you? Remember that verse, that discipline isn't fun at the time. It's hard, but later it's going to produce fruit if you stick with it. Decide to stick with it, and let's just get healthy once and for all and rely on God to help us do that. Have a great week, sisters. I love you all so much, and I will talk with you soon.